We're here in Chino Valley talking to town officials about two big ballot questions that will be decided by voters on May 21st. We'll be getting into the nitty-gritty details here with Frank Marbury, the town engineer and the director of public works. We also want to highlight, the fact that elections are going on in Arizona at the local level throughout the year, and you can always check out our website to take a look at those various elections. But it's also important that folks understand that the issues that affect them most are sometimes being decided not in a big presidential election or a big gubernatorial election, but right here in May. So without further ado, here's Frank Marbury to walk us through these two ballot questions. Frank, thanks for being with us.
Sure, thank you.
So, we've got these two questions, so we'll kind of take them one at a time, I guess. Question one has to do with the financing of construction and maintenance of the town's roads. Can you summarize for me a little bit what this question is about?
Basically, council got input from the citizens and feedback that the road maintenance around town needs some improvement. The road condition keeps deteriorating, and the situation was studied, and it was determined that a need for program maintenance of the roads is sorely needed. The dollar amount that was determined was about $1.5 million per year. And the best way to determine how to fund that, council believes, is to institute a primary property tax. And that's what the question of the voters is whether or not they want council to implement a property tax for dedicated to road maintenance alone.
Sure. When they were considering the types of revenue sources that there were, how did they decide on a property tax?
There was other measures looked at. Generally, most towns look at an increase in sales tax in the western U.S. The sales tax in Chino Valley is already pretty high relative to other cities and towns nearby. They didn't think that was economically an option to raise the sales tax anymore. Bonding was looked at, but the problem with bonding is for the road maintenance, the life of the bond would exceed the life of the road maintenance that's being done. So you're paying on interest for something that's already worn out.
Right.
So that wasn't a good idea. So that's where the idea for the property tax seemed to be the best fit for Chino Valley at this time.
Right. So rather than having sort of this hangover financial liability, you'll pay as you go.
Right, it's a pay-as-you-go situation.
Now, obviously, one of the big questions that voters are going to ask anytime you talk about raising revenue is, how much are they going to have to pay? So what, if you had the average voter, what's the financial impact on them?
Sure, the town studied based on assessed value of properties, and that's not necessarily market value, that's the assessed value that the county assesses for the homes. It averages about half of the market value of a home. So for the average home in Chino Valley, it equates to about $226 per year.
Okay.
Is how that works out for the average home, which market value is a little over $200,000 for the average home.
Gotcha. Okay. And this, as you noted, this will be the first property tax levied by the voters for the city. Let's talk a little bit about, first of all, the need for funding, and then we'll talk about how the funding will be used. Now, around the state, towns and cities have found themselves with difficulty with respect to financing their road maintenance. Why is that a problem in the state?
Generally, the major source of funding for road maintenance is the HERF revenues, the Highway User Revenue Fund, which is a portion of the shared revenues from the state, portion of the gas tax that you pay every time you buy a gallon of gas. Over the years, that fund dipped down during the economic recession as the revenues went down with people not being able to afford as much gas. And also, some of those funds were swept by the state legislature to fund other operations besides road maintenance, such as the DPS patrols of the roads. Those funds are slowly coming back. But right now with Chino Valley's budget, they're able to allocate about $400,000 per year for programmed road maintenance. But the need is over 1.5 million per year for that. So this would help fill that gap that's still needed, even with the bounce back of the HERF revenues.
Sure. And so that gets to the question of how is the funding going to be used, and relatedly, is the funding restricted to specific uses?
Sure. This funding, HERF revenues are restricted by law to be used only on streets. Yeah. But they can be used for salaries and wages and equipment and fuel for town
projects.
Our road department, basically. Sure. But this would have even more restrictions than the HERF revenue. It would be restricted to no employee salaries or wages, no miscellaneous overhead or office supplies. It would be basically going to pay contractors, maybe engineers to design it, but mainly contractors to put the work on the road. Yeah. For the project, and that would be audited on an annual basis by an independent auditing firm and reported in the town's financial reports every year.
What kind of input will the public get in how roads are improved if this were to pass?
Sure. The way it'll work if this passes is it'll start at the staff level. Yeah. The engineering staff under the Public Works Department will develop a 7-year capital improvement program, which will list almost every street in town, and which year that they plan on those being the maintenance treatment being applied. That will be reviewed by the Roads and Streets Committee, which is a committee set up by council with some council members and some citizens that are appointed on that committee. Most of those have road experience. They're retired ADOT engineers and the like. Those are public meetings to where the citizens can also have input. That's reviewed, and then it's also reviewed at the council level in the budget process every year.
So one last question, I guess, about this question is what happens if voters don't pass question 1?
So if voters don't pass question 1, the funding level will stay what it is now, mostly from HERF revenues, and the town will continue to maintain the roads to the best of their ability. But as a town engineer, I can tell you the road condition will overall decrease if there's not a high enough level of funding to maintain those roads. Sure. So you're going to see the roads continue to get worse, more potholes and such.
Sure.
Is the reality of it.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about question 2, which is about authorizing the town to purchase water companies that are within the city limits here. What is that question about?
The town right now, there are 5 water companies within the town limits of Chino Valley. The town water company is one of those. City of Prescott operates some facilities within the town, and there's some other private utility companies that formed as rural water companies at the time they were formed. Back around 2000, there was a election that had a ballot question where the voters in town recommended that the town go into the utility business and start operating the water and sewer utilities. After that, there was a court case down in Pima County, Arizona around 2012, 2014 that put some more restrictions. Because of the ruling of that court case, you need to ask for the voters for permission for the specific companies to be able to purchase. So this ballot question is asking the voters, do they want to give council permission if the opportunity arises in the future to purchase those specific companies and no more or no less than what is listed?
Got it. So since the town already does own a water company, what's the advantage of purchasing other water companies if you're already in that business?
There's a few advantages. Some of the companies the town can operate maybe at a cheaper cost because there's no profit if it's a private company. The larger the town water utility grows, you get economies of scale to operate more efficiently. Also, instead of answering to a private board, the council will be the entity that answers to the operation of that water company. So the voters have representation of the actual operation of that company. And there's also economic benefits for the town, that as the infrastructure increases and the utility footprint increases, it's more attractive to some of the businesses that might want to come in town, because a lot of businesses these days don't want to do individual water or sewer systems. They want to come on town utilities.
Sure. And the net effect then on a resident's water bill is it up, down, indifferent? Depends on the user?
From the appraisals that have been done, the town believes that any debt service or monies used for the acquisition of these companies would be able to be paid for within the existing utility rate structure of the town utility bill. So if those private companies are purchased, those customers would then come on to the town's utility rate system.
Gotcha.
And in many cases that might even be lower than what they're paying now, but the existing rate structure should cover those costs.
Okay. And then if the voters were to say no to this, what does that mean going forward?
The one thing council's looking at is a few of these water companies have been around for a while, and the people that own them, if they decide to sell them or don't want to operate them anymore, or they go to their heirs upon passing, would mean that the town would not even be able to purchase that if the company wanted to sell it. The town could likely operate it, but they would not be in control of the company itself. So you could run into an issue where no one wants to run the company.
Right.
And the town would have to run it without the authority to be able to operate it.
I see. Well, thank you very much, and we hope everybody gets out and votes in the May 21st election.